Did you know there are 5 Claude techniques that can completely change the quality of what it produces for you? I've been using all 5 for the past year, and they're the reason I stopped rewriting everything Claude gives me. So in this video, I'm going to show you each one with a real example so you can start using them today. The first skill is the one that changed my output quality more than anything else, and it starts with telling Claude to stop writing. The typical approach is to open Claude, type something like, "Write me a marketing strategy," and Claude immediately produces 2 pages of generic recommendations that could apply to any company in any industry. The output is technically correct, but completely useless because Claude had zero context about your audience, your budget, your competitive landscape, what you've already tried, or what your CEO actually cares about seeing in a strategy document. The way you fix it is with a single instruction. Before Claude writes anything, tell it to interview you first. I'll type, "Interview me about every aspect of this project before you produce anything. Ask one question at a time until you fully understand what I need." Next, Claude starts asking targeted questions, and not surface-level ones. It asks about your target audience and how they've shifted since last quarter. It asks what worked in Q2 and what didn't. It asks about budget constraints and whether you're optimizing for growth or efficiency, who the deliverable is for, and what format they expect, and what success looks like in specific measurable terms. By the time Claude has asked 10 to 15 questions, it has more context than most team members get in a briefing meeting, and the output it produces after that interrogation is a completely different quality than what you get from a single prompt. The recommendations are specific to your company, the metrics reference your actual targets, and the language matches the tone your leadership team expects. I used this on a client proposal last month that would normally take me 3 drafts to get right. After a 12-question interrogation, the first draft landed. The reason this works is that Claude defaults to being helpful immediately, which means it fills in every gap in your prompt with assumptions. The interrogation forces it to ask instead of assume, and the quality difference between assumed context and provided context is the difference between a draft you delete and a draft you send. This works on anything where the output needs to be tailored: strategy documents, client proposals, board presentations, performance reviews, even email chains where the tone matters. Anytime you find yourself rewriting Claude's output to fit your specific situation, the interrogation would have prevented that rewrite. Once Claude has the full picture, the next skill makes sure the output actually holds up under scrutiny. The second skill is about catching problems before anyone else does, and it works by having Claude review its own work from perspectives that aren't yours. The natural instinct is to read through Claude's output, make a few edits, and send it. The problem is that you're reviewing it from one angle, your own, but the people receiving it are reading it from a completely different one. Your CFO reads it for financial rigor, your client reads it for relevance to their problem, and your board reads it for strategic risk. A single review from your perspective misses what all 3 of them would catch instantly. After Claude produces any deliverable, I run 3 perspective reviews before I accept it. First, I'll type, "Review this as my CFO would. What financial gaps, unsupported claims, or missing ROI calculations would they flag?" Claude immediately identifies things like vague cost projections, missing timelines on ROI, unquantified risk, and benefit claims that aren't tied to specific numbers. It catches the exact things a CFO would circle in red during a review meeting. Then I run a second pass. I'll type, "Now review this as our biggest client would. What feels generic, what doesn't address their specific situation, and what would make them feel like this was written for someone else." This review catches a completely different set of issues. The CFO review catches the numbers, and the client review catches everything that feels generic or irrelevant to their situation. It flags sections where examples don't match the client's industry, where the language is too internal, and where recommendations feel templated instead of tailored. And a third pass. I'll type, "Review this as a skeptical board member. What risks aren't addressed? What assumptions haven't been validated? And where are the logical gaps?" The review from a board member's perspective gives a completely different result. It uncovered unaddressed risks, unvalidated assumptions, and logical gaps throughout the report, timelines that didn't account for legal review delays, and positioning claims a client could easily question based on how they use a competitor's product. A quarterly report I ran through these 3 perspectives last month caught issues I would have completely missed on my own. Each review takes about 30 seconds to run and 2 minutes to read, so the full 3 perspective review adds less than 10 minutes to your workflow, and the output that survives 3 different perspectives is significantly stronger than anything a single review produces. You can also create custom perspectives based on whoever is actually receiving the work. If you're presenting to a technical team, review from their CTO's perspective. perspective. If you're pitching investors, review from a skeptical LP's perspective. The more specific you make the reviewer, the more useful the feedback becomes. The perspective shift improves finished work. But the next skill is about how you build complex deliverables in the first place. The third skill changes how you approach any deliverable that's longer than a single page. The default approach is to try to get Claude to produce a full document in one prompt. Write me a business proposal for expanding into the European market. Claude produces something that reads like a first draft because it is a single pass from a model that's trying to cover research, structure, tone, and detail all at once. Instead, you break the deliverable into phases where each phase builds on the last and gets validated before the next one begins. Phase 1 is the brief. I'll type, I need a business proposal for European expansion. Before we write anything, draft a one-page brief covering the objective, the audience, the key questions we need to answer, and the structure of the final document. Claude produces a focused brief that becomes the blueprint for everything that follows. And this is where you spot problems early, because if the brief is targeting the wrong audience or asking the wrong questions, you fix it in 2 minutes instead of rewriting a 15-page document later. Phase 2 is research. I'll type, based on this brief, research the key questions we identified. For each one, give me the data points, the risks, and the opportunities. You get structured research for each question in the brief. If you have web search enabled, it pulls current data. If you've uploaded internal documents into the conversation, it references those as well. Phase 3 is the outline. I'll type, using the brief and the research, draft a detailed section-by-section outline with the key argument for each section and the supporting evidence from the research phase. The outline is where the structure of the final document takes shape, and reviewing an outline is 10 times faster than reviewing a full draft. If a section is in the wrong place or an argument doesn't flow logically, you catch it here. And phase 4 is the full draft, which Claude writes with the brief, the research, and the outline all in context. The document that comes out of 4 phases reads like something a team produced over a week. The arguments build on each other, the data supports the claims, and the structure flows logically because each phase was validated before the next one started. I built a 15-page client proposal this way last quarter, and the partner reviewing it was convinced an entire team had worked on it. I've used this on proposals, strategy documents, board presentations, market analyses, competitive intelligence reports, and anything else where depth and structure matter more than speed. The phases add maybe 20 minutes to the total process, but the output quality is in a different league from one-shot prompting. Chain of documents handles the quality of what you build, but it doesn't help when the project itself is massive, and nobody knows what to start first. The fourth skill is for any project that's big enough to feel overwhelming, which in my experience is most of them. When a project lands on your desk, the temptation is to start working on whatever feels most urgent, but urgency and importance aren't the same thing, and starting with the wrong task can create bottlenecks that cost you weeks. Instead, I give Claude the full scope of a project and tell it to decompose it. I'll type, here's the full scope of our product launch. Break this down into independent tasks. For each task, tell me what it depends on, what it blocks, and what can run in parallel. Claude identifies the dependencies that aren't obvious. The pricing page can't go live until legal reviews the terms, which can't happen until the pricing model is finalized, which depends on the competitive analysis. That chain of dependencies means the competitive analysis needs to start on day 1, not day 5 when someone finally gets around to it. It also identifies tasks that can run in parallel. While one team is working on the competitive analysis, another can be building the landing page template because those two work streams don't depend on each other. I used this on a product launch last quarter that had 14 moving pieces across 3 departments. Claude decomposed it into a sequence task list in about 90 seconds, and it flagged dependency chains that would have caused delays if we'd started in the order the team originally planned. One chain involved the compliance review, which had a 2-week turnaround that nobody had factored into the timeline. If we discovered that dependency in week 3 instead of day 1, the entire launch would have slipped by at least 10 days. The breakdown also becomes a communication tool. When your VP asks for a status update, you can point to which tasks are complete, which are in progress, and which are blocked with a clear explanation of why. It turns a vague "we're on track" into a specific status report that builds confidence. The same approach applies to product launches, hiring pipelines, office relocations, system migrations, and any project where multiple people or teams need to coordinate their work without stepping on each other. The first 4 skills improve individual deliverables and projects, but the 5th skill is what makes all of them faster over time. The 5th skill is about eliminating the setup cost that slows down every conversation you have with Claude. If you're using Claude without projects or custom instructions, you're starting every conversation from zero. Every time you ask for something, you have to re-explain your role, your company, your industry, your writing preferences, and the context of what you're working on. That setup takes 5 to 10 minutes per conversation, and over a week of daily use, that's over an hour spent just re-explaining who you are. The way around around it is to set up a Claude project and load it with your persistent context. This includes your role and responsibilities, your company's products and market position, your preferred writing tone and format, any recurring templates or frameworks you use, the names and roles of key stakeholders you reference often, and your company's specific terminology or acronyms. Once that context is loaded, every conversation inside the project starts with Claude already knowing who you are, what you do, and how you like things done. The difference is like working with a new contractor versus someone who's been on your team for 6 months. The new contractor needs a briefing every time. The team member just needs the task. I set up a project for my weekly reporting workflow, and a report that used to take 20 minutes of context setting and back and forth now takes a single message. I paste in raw metrics and data, type weekly report, and Claude produces a draft in my format and tone, using the exact metrics I always track because all that context is already loaded. I have separate projects for client communications, strategy documents, and internal memos, and each one carries its own context, so the output matches the audience without me specifying it every time. And memory stacking makes every other skill on this list faster. The interrogation method asks better questions because Claude already knows your business. The perspective shift reviews from more accurate angles because it knows your stakeholders by name. Chain of documents produces more relevant research because it knows your industry and competitive landscape. And the breakdown method identifies more accurate dependencies because it knows your team structure and approval processes. These 5 skills compound and make your process faster every time you use Claude. And if you want to see how these skills fit into a full system for running a one-person operation with Claude, I made a complete playbook that covers everything from daily workflows to client delivery right here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.